Hey guys, welcome back. Now today we're starting a series on our 5x5 power prospecting system. And in the last video, we talked about prospecting companies and what it looks like for you to be a prospecting-based, marketing-enhanced company. Meaning that how can you grow faster at a lower cost, and then with a higher profitability you have, now be really smart about what you do with your marketing side of the business. So we are going to go deep on actually teaching you how to become a prospecting-based company, because that's a lot of the things. That's one of these things that a lot of people don't know how to do. Now, the interesting thing is that prospecting is very common practice in just about every other industry out there, but for some reason, the inspection industry hasn't actually moved into the prospecting side of things. So with IEB, we've seen some companies really win at a high level with prospecting. So we're going to lay out the 5x5 system and teach you every part of it. It's going to be several videos here that we put together. So I'll even show you kind of why we call it a 5x5 system. So real quick, let's talk about what the actual 5x5 system looks like, right? And we've got 5 things that we're looking at on the system side. And we're calling these the S side, the system side. And then we've got 5 things that we're looking at on the accountability side. Okay, so when you combine these 5 things on the system side with these 5 things on the accountability side, you're going to get really big results. Okay, and that's what you want. You want big results, results you can track, results that you actually can look at and say, man, we're getting great return on our investment on this. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to lay out the system for you. You may have seen this. We've got the resource guide for you as well. We can actually kind of just follow along in the slides if you want to follow along there. But essentially, we're looking at a couple things, and we're looking at who, how, why, and we look at focus, and we look at improvement. Right? So when we talk about the who, we're going to look at lists and data. And the first thing you got to understand is, okay, if I'm going to prospect, who am I going to prospect to? Remember, marketing is kind of more of a shotgun type approach. Prospecting is like a laser type approach. So we're going to get really laser focused on who we're going to be prospecting to. Okay, next is actually going to be like the dialing system. We're going to actually look at setting up your prospecting system and what that looks like, right? Next, we're going to look at the purpose. Okay, so when you're actually reaching out and calling somebody, there's got to be a strong purpose to why you're calling them. You don't want to be a prospector and just call them and say, hey, how's it going? Just thought about calling you. There's got to be a real purpose behind it. So we look at that. Number 4 in focus, we can look at standards and expectations. And then we're going to look at improvement, and that's going to be the accountability. Okay. Now, so we've got our system set up here. It's going to be the who, the how, the why, the focus, and improvement. And then on the accountability side, there's a couple things that we're going to track. Anything from how many hours we dial, to how many calls we make, to how many conversations, how many appointments set, and how many appointments gone on. We're going to go really deep on that a little bit later. Okay. So this is kind of the start of the system here of the 5x5. Right. This is like a proprietary system that we set up here within IEB. So we're really excited about this and continually going deeper on this. Now, I'm just going to erase this real quick, and then we're actually going to jump into what this looks like. All right, so I got the board cleared off, and we're going right back into this, and we're going to talk about number 1 on the system side, which is going to be your lists and data. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple of things you want to look for here, and then we're actually going to dissect the MLS and show you who you want to be talking to when it comes to prospecting. So the first thing we got to have is we got to have some lists and data of who we're going to prospect to, because really great prospectors are really clear when they get ready to prospect about who they're going to be calling and what the result is they want from that call. So that's the first place we've got to start on setting up the prospecting system. So as we're doing these videos, I want you to stop every time we're done with the video and actually do the work. And as we go through these videos, you're going to be building your prospecting system, okay? So the first thing that we want to look at is, okay, what kind of data do we want to get, right? Now, we're talking about real estate agents' data here. And the first thing we want to do is we want to get the name of the agent. what brokerage they're at. Okay, so we got name brokerage. Okay, we got a slide that really breaks this out for you guys as well in the resources, right? We want their phone number. Really cool thing about real estate agents is they post their phone numbers everywhere, so they shouldn't be too hard to find. Okay. Next thing, we're going to get their email. Okay. We also want to get their actual address, and that could be, some agents use their personal address at home, some agents use their brokerage address, but just somewhere you can send some mail to if you need to. And then we're going to look at their number of transactions and their kind of number of sales volume. Okay. Now you may be saying, okay, why do we need all this information, right? If you're going to set up a strong prospecting system, you want to get really clear on, the person that you're valuing. Now, obviously, okay, their name, that makes sense. The brokerage, that makes sense. Phone number, yes. Email, yes. Address, yes. But why do we need their transactions and sales volume? Let's talk about that, okay? We're going to talk about your MLS. So wherever you are in North America right now, you've got a MLS. I'll say everywhere. There's probably some rural areas that don't actually have MLSs, but we're going to assume that all of you guys are at least in some kind of metro area or closer metro area that has an MLS on it, right? Now, here's the kind of thing that we've seen in the past is that typically the traditional way to do things is that, hey, we're going to pick an office or, a group of agents and we're going to market to them, and we're going to spend a lot of money kind of coming here and marketing to the MLS, but it's not segmented. So a lot of times what happens is the money's actually spent on the lower producers that actually don't do a lot of business. And that's where the marketing effect is completely lost. So you're overspending, spending a lot of money, getting very little results because you're marketing to a large segment that isn't actually broken out. So you don't really know, okay, who are the people that we need to be focusing on? And this is exactly why when you build your list, you want to start understanding the transaction volume and the sales volume of the people that you're going after, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is, as much as possible, you want to start understanding the breakout of your MLS. Now, here in Houston, we've got a really big MLS. We've got over probably about 35,000 agents in the MLS. Now, there are agents from around Texas that are part of the Houston Association. So even if we kind of start breaking it down and saying like, hey, the people that aren't active, people from the other towns that aren't even like, agents here, people that are just, kind of put their name there, but they don't really do anything. If we kind of whittle it down, we may still have like 20,000 agents that have current licenses that are actually active in some kind of capacity, whether they're not really doing many deals or like they're doing a ton of deals, right? But what we have to understand is that we kind of break out the MLS into three distinct parts, okay? And what we're doing is, first off, we break it out and we're looking at over here, we've got the top 20%. The top 20% producers, okay? Next, we've got what we call the fat middle. And that is kind of the middle 60% of producers. And then down at the bottom, at the bottom 20%. Okay. So the first thing that you have to understand about your MLS is you have to understand, okay, who's in the top 20%, who's in the fat middle, and who's in the bottom 20%. You have to understand that. If you don't, at the core level, understand this breakout of your MLS, it's going to be very difficult for you to, one, grow your company faster at a lower cost, and secondly, compete in the future, right? One thing that we do know is that the level of competition in the inspection industry has historically been very low. There hasn't been a lot of tight competition. What we're going to see in the next 5 years is that the level of competition in servicing, in prospecting and marketing, everything else is going to go up a lot. So if you don't understand this, it's going to be very difficult for you in the next 5 years to be successful. Okay, I want you guys to really understand that. You have to understand how to segment out essentially your target audience that you're going after. Now, we have met people, we have some companies in IEB that they're mainly focused on going out to consumer, but we still understand that at this point, more than 95% of all real estate transactions involve a real estate agent, and they are the gatekeepers for you. So for me to think that I'm going to go straight out to the consumer and really try to bypass a lot of the real estate agents that like to be in control, I wouldn't necessarily take that bet on everything. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do some of what you're doing straight to consumer. Right now, the data is showing that your best shot at growing fast is actually going to the agents and getting very targeted. So here's what we're looking at. Number one, let's kind of start on the bottom going up, right? On the bottom 20% of agents, you need to not focus at all on the bottom 20%. Now, right now you may be saying, okay, Dirk, yeah, but there's agents that are going to become, you know, these kind of middle group producers and top producers out of this bottom. So if I can get in front of them now when they're baby agents and they're just kind of getting going, then they'll be loyal to me all the way up. And number one is you have to understand the statistics of the bottom 20%. The bottom 20% will completely turn within 3 years, which means that if you focus on the bottom 20%, it's going to completely turn in 3 years. They're not even going to be there anymore. Now, some people will actually make it up into the middle, yes. And there are agents that will actually go from being at the bottom to being in the top 20% in 3 years. But the statistics are that probably about 2% of those agents are actually going to make it either into the middle or into the top within 3 years. So if you're focusing here, the high majority, like 9 out of every 10 agents that you're talking to are going to be out of the business in 3 years. Now think about this, when you guys are sponsoring money, when you're paying a lot of money for a lunch and you're sitting in a real estate office, the high majority of those people are going to be typically in the bottom 20% or at least in the bottom half of the fat middle, the bottom half of the 60%. Typically, when you're sponsoring a lunch at an office or a sales meeting or something like that, typically that's who is in the room, the majority of who's in the room. A lot of top producers are not in those meetings unless the office brings a really high value to those top producers. Right, so I've been the CEO of 2 real estate brokerages. One had over 200 agents. The other one had almost 500 agents, big offices. So I can tell you from personally being in that role as the team leader and CEO of offices that in the high majority of time, the people that typically just kind of spending time at the office coming to the sales meeting are going to be, if you're looking at this chart from the middle down, and the high majority of them are going to be kind of like the newer agents, right? So think about that next time you want to write a check for $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 or $1,000 to sponsor something, and who you're sponsoring to, and the fact that very, very few of them are actually going to be in the business 2 or 3 years from now. Okay. The other thing is that you can go to the fat middle, sure. Like there's nothing wrong. Like these people are going to be a little bit more proven out, a much better chance they're going to be in the business 2 or 3 years from now. But there's still a big churn rate here. Right? Probably at least about like 40% of this group is going to be out of the business in 2 years. So there's still a big, like you guys just understand, like there's a huge churn rate in the real estate industry, right? The National Association of Realtors typically has a little over like 1.2 million members. And, you know, they kind of like built that up and up and up. And like around 2005, 2006 started peaking. And then after the recession, it went way back down. And they haven't even like really gotten back all the way over like where they were like in 2005-06, right? But think about this, there are literally like hundreds of thousands of people that get their real estate license each year. Hundreds of thousands of people are coming in, yet the overall numbers are just really slowly growing. And after the recession, they dipped in a huge way. It's a high churn business. So if you're going out there and you're marketing to people that are churning all the time, you are wasting your money, you're wasting your marketing dollars, and that's where your profitability is sucking right now. That's why your profitability is sucking, is because you're spending a lot of money to people that aren't even going to be in the business. The other thing is that if you're looking from this like fat middle line down, the number of transactions per year that these people are doing are extremely low. I mean, these people are going to be doing all the way from like 0, maybe up to like, you know, 5 to 7 transactions a year. Now think about that. Like I'm going after, like if you're spending time over here, you're turning, not only people are churning a lot, but they're doing a low volume of business. In IEB, we say there's only one natural place that you need to be focusing your prospecting efforts, and that is, you guessed it, the top 20%. Why? Because the 80-20 rule, right? if I'm looking at the top 20% over here, and even if I put the whole other 80% over here, the top 20% of the MLS does 80% of the business, and the whole rest of 80% does 20% of the business. It's an inverse relationship. But it's probably more extreme in most MLSs today. There may be 10% of the agents that are doing 90% of the business. So if you're spending time with the other 90%, they're only doing 10% of the business in the MLS. So this was where you could be marketing really hard and just seeing no growth because you're getting in front of the wrong people. Now, the number one reason that we've seen that a lot of inspection companies aren't going after the top 20% of the top producers is they don't know how to build relationships with them, period. They're approaching these people as like, hey, I'm a vendor and I want to have a vendor to top producer relationship, and that's not the way to do it, right? You got to get on a peer-to-peer relationship with them. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But here's the thing, just right now, forget the bottom 20. You got to understand the data. The bottom 20, don't even worry about it. And here's the thing, if somebody from the bottom 20 starts coming up to the fat middle or even the top 20, you grab them then, right? Now, there may already be like a level of loyalty to them, but if you're the company, if you're the inspection company that works with the top producers, when this person's starting to become a top producer and they're asking other top producers, hey, who are you working with? And they say, oh, we work with this company that works with a lot of top producers. That new agent that's becoming a top producer will drop the other inspection company and they'll start doing business with you because you're the company that does business with top producers. You guys get this? Talent likes talent. Talent hangs out with talent. Talent emulates talent. If you guys are doing business with a top talent, then they will tell other talented people to do business with you also, okay? So, where do we focus our time, effort, and energy? Now, let's go extreme, right? So, we just broke up the top 20 and we said, okay, that's where we want to focus. Now, here's the thing, right? What if we took the top 20% and we split it again 80-20? It's like extreme Pareto, right? So, the Pareto principle is 80-20, which means that we're going to split it out. We did that, now we're going to do it again, right? So, what that means is we have kind of this little chunk over here and a little bit bigger chunk. So we're just kind of looking at this in a bigger way, right? So now we have the MLS, and that's the top 4% here. And then we have the MLS next kind of 16% here, right? So again, 16 plus 4 is 20. It's still the top 20%, but we've broken them out again. So here's what we say. Number one, on your prospecting, focus here on the top 4%. Secondly, you focus on the 16%, and thirdly, you focus on the 60%, okay? Again, we're not doing anything down here with the bottom percent. Don't even worry about it. Top 4%, top 16%, and then the 60%. Now, let's just say that I'm in an MLS like Houston, there's 20,000 active type agents, right? Our MLS has over 35,000, but let's just say right off the bat, we know like a lot of them aren't doing anything, aren't interested in doing anything, they're just kind of having a real estate, hanging their license somewhere. Let's just say I've got 20,000 people, right? Now, if I look at the top 20%, that's 4,000 agents in Houston. 4,000 agents, that's still a huge chunk. I can't, like, right now, like, I don't even know if I can do business with all of them, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break that out and say, okay, what would it look like for me just to do business with the top 4%, right? Now, if I've got 4,000 agents, and I'm going out and doing business with them, and I'm just looking at the top 4%, I've got like 1,200 agents, right? So the top 4 is going to equal 1,200 agents, and then the bottom 16% is going to equal 2,800 agents, okay? Now look at this. What if I can get the list of the top 1,200 agents in my MLS? And I start putting a list together and saying like, that is going to be my go-to prospecting list. Because if we number from number 1 down to 1,200, or you may be saying, Dirk, your MLS is huge, my MLS is way smaller. Let's say in your MLS, it's like number 1 down to, let's just even say number 400, right? Let's say your MLS is quite a bit smaller, like 33% of what our MLS is, right? What would it look like for you to really start focusing on the top 400 agents in your MLS? And you starting to do a bigger chunk of their business. You're getting hyper-focused now on who you're going after, because here's the thing, like, this is where the gold is. Like, remember when we talked about prospecting? That's where the gold is. Like, right off the bat, we can knock out, you know, this bottom chunk over here. We can even knock out the bottom 60. We can even knock out, like, the next 16%. Like, we're going after the top 4% of agents in your MLS. What does it look like for you to start targeting those people, start having conversations with them, building relationships, getting one-on-one with them, and they start using you? Right, so here's one thing I want you to focus on. When it comes to the top producers, here's something that's really cool, okay? Now, let's say today I'm doing business with just 10 top producers. Remember, we talked about your MLS maybe being like 1,200 top producers or 400, or maybe it's even 200, but let's just talk about 10. Let's say these 10 top producers can give me an average of 30 deals a year, okay? Very doable in most MLSs. Some MLSs, this can be upwards of 60, 80, or 100 deals, right? So that means that I do 300 inspections from these 10 agents. Now, here's the thing about top agents: they are driven to grow their business, right? They're aggressively out there seeing how they can grow their business. So if next year I don't do anything except retain these top 10 agents, what's going to happen is their business is going to grow. I mean, 25% year-over-year growth for a top agent is slow growth, right? So let's just say at least 50%. Some of them are going to be like 100%, but let's just say at least they're growing by 50%. That means that next year they can give you an average of 45 transactions each, which means now you did 450 inspections, and your company grew 50% just by retaining the people that you already have. Now your job is to retain these top producers and go after more top producers. As you retain these, you're going to see a boost in your growth from retaining the growth line of people that are growing their businesses, and then you just start adding to that. You start adding, and then the balance for you becomes like acquisition versus retention, acquisition versus retention. And then you can marketing, kind of remember, like marketing enhanced on top of that. But when you get this prospecting thing down and you start going after the top agents, you're going to see an explosion in growth in your company. So that's what we're going to continue to talk about, right? So we're going to wrap up this video now by just saying, like, look, here's what you need to get as far as the lists go, and you got to be able to rank your MLS to understand the top 20, the fat middle, and the bottom 20. Now, there's several different ways to get this data. We can't really just get into that conversation, and maybe more of a one-on-one conversation that we have within IEB. But you're going to need to get this data, right? That's the first point. You can't go any further in this and really have a strong prospecting, influence in your business if you don't get this. So this is number one. Get the data, and then we're going to start talking about how to set up your actual